Welcome back, Equity Warriors. Thanks for tuning in. You know, this season, we are focused on the intersection of education and politics. And so I have a guest today. Her name is Briana, or Bree Franklin. She's a dedicated businesswoman, philanthropist, and student debt thought leader, driven to empower Black girls and women holistically. Struggling with nearly $120,000 in student debt herself, she founded the Prosperity Project to combat the $2 trillion student debt crisis and foster financial literacy among Black women. Her innovative solutions have earned global support and accolades, including South by Southwest 2023 Innovation Award for Social Impact and Visionary Women's Rising Visionary Award. Her work has been featured in Forbes, BuzzFeed, and Authority magazine, cementing her role as a visionary in social change. Welcome to the show, Briana.
Oh my gosh, thank you so much for such a generous and heartwarming introduction. I think I need to recruit you to get my intros from now on. That's the best thing yet.
It's all you. It's all you. So let's talk about that student loan debt. I had student loans myself. I understand the burden. According to the Federal Reserve, there are 45 million people in the U.S. who collectively hold more than 1.5 trillion with a T, trillion dollars in student loan debt. That's 1 in every 7 Americans. And student loans are the largest consumer debt category after mortgages. That's huge. So I want to ask you to share your thoughts on the current political debate around student loan forgiveness and how it might disproportionately affect Black girls and women. And then if you can, give us some recommendations for a fair policy.
Of course. So living here in DC as of this January, I am literally right next door and entrenched in the heart of everything that's going on. So very privy to these conversations. And the fact that it even is a debate in the first place is very disappointing because to me, it's just basic common sense, you know, in terms of leveling the playing field and making sure that there is equitable and real opportunity for young enterprising students to use higher education to advance them as they pursue their dreams and ultimately want to build financial stability. And I think that how it impacts Black girls and women, we, of course, are always getting the short end of every single stick there is. Health crisis, finance, of course, ownership opportunities, promotion. So I'm seeing that a lot of Black women have really just kind of resigned that this is just the best life is going to be. And the worst, actually, life is going to be. They're like, well, why even bother? I'm going to die with this debt. No one's looking out for me. You know, I've really given it an honest attempt. And if I could do it all over again, I would not have put myself in this position. So I think when we discuss it, it's also important to be really precise with what exactly is happening. And I actually picked up a term at a conference a couple weeks ago that, like, if I had known that out the gate when I started Prosperity Project 3 years ago, that would have done wonders because I kept saying rescuing Black women with student debt, but it's not always a bad experience. Some people are like, well, it did set me back, but I was one of the folks who ended up tracking as I was supposed to. And I got a law degree and I make lawyer money and I paid back my loans in 5 years and it's done. So really focusing on those who have become debt constrained is really how we're moving forward and how I encourage people to talk about the issue. And I think a much fairer, more equitable solution would absolutely be to hold the parties responsible that keep perpetuating it, because even though it is disappointing that the proposed cancellation did not go through because something is, of course, better than nothing, I do think that it was not nearly robust enough for solving the issue at the root, and that it also would have left so many people high and dry who just happened to not qualify at that exact moment in time, whether that's because they hadn't yet graduated or maybe they had a parental situation that affect the qualifications, the policy changes so often it's hard to keep up. So that's like a very high level answer in terms of how I think they could have gotten it right.
Okay, great. So there've been a lot. I'm glad, you're in DC, so you're probably hearing it a lot more than the rest of us are. And I try to pay attention to it. We have 3 adult children, all of whom had have some student loan debt, right? So it's important for us, for our children to understand what's going on. And so those political decisions about education funding, let's talk about how they've impacted accessibility and affordability of higher education for marginalized communities, particularly Black folks and Black girls who are looking for options to get into college right now. Any solutions?
So just to make sure I understand the question, you're saying solutions for those who are aspiring to get into college and avoid being burned by student debt, if I have it right.
Yes, yes.
I'm very passionate about that piece too. I feel like my calling absolutely is to solve this issue in its entirety. And I think intervention and prevention is very much part of that solution. And so I've been doing this on my own accord, but then we've expanded lightly into it as an organization as well, of meeting with high schoolers, meeting with current college students and those who are about to graduate, and just being brutally transparent, right? Not, of course, trying to scare anyone or use fear tactics, but being willing to have the conversations a lot of people tend to just downplay, which only does service to those young people. So my advice is reverse engineer, right? Start out with your strengths, start out with the talents that you were born with and pay attention to what sticks. And then decide, is college going to directly translate into material gains for my skill set? And in some cases, that is a very clear, resounding yes. I want my doctor to be college educated. I would love my lawyer to be college educated. I want, somebody who's a professor having that credential, right? But it is not necessary in 2023 for every profession. And a lot of tech companies have even issued out a bachelor's requirement. So I'm very vocal about sharing that information with young people and just saying, my goal for you is that you have total financial freedom. And if a degree is going to put you on that path, by all means, go for it. However, if that doesn't make any sense in your situation, it doesn't mean you're a failure. It doesn't mean you're a black sheep. It doesn't mean what it used to 30 plus years ago when there were no other alternatives. And it was still a very tried and true, hard cut set of options for getting an education.
Okay, great. So politics, and particularly partisan politics. We know that when we're talking about student loan debt, and even getting into college now with recent Supreme Court ruling, it's a left and right, red and blue. It's partisan politics. How do you see this, all of these things, including the student loan debt? Because I think that if people are paying attention to what's being said about student loans and about our getting into college, do you think people are paying attention to that? And for, especially for Black people, girls and women, how do you think those messages are coming across to them?
If I were in their shoes, if I were coming into college now and I was privy to these conversations and of course, the affirmative action being struck down, I would just question, do I matter to you all anymore? Because that's how I'm seeing it. I'm like, no one even cares about the students at this point. And when I say no one, I mean those who are in power and abusing it and should be doing the right thing with it. If I were a student right now, I'd just be wondering, where is all of this going? I you hear people getting into heated debates and it just becomes such a popularity contest and a power play, and people focused on the wrong things. They've taken their eye completely off of what really matters, which simply is being able to incubate and cultivate young leaders, young professionals, people who add value to their communities and to the world and do good for themselves. So I definitely am very concerned by the fact that so much of the rhetoric and jargon is focused on bashing the representatives and, bashing each other. And it's like they've just resorted to infighting, and it's just not even tied to what really is at the root of it at this point.
Yeah. So the Prosperity Project, tell us a little bit more about what it is that you do.
Yes. So we were formed in June of 2020. So perfect time to start a nonprofit in the middle of a global pandemic. I say that half jokingly because in our case, it actually was the perfect storm of circumstances to get up and going. And our mission is to close the generational wealth gap for debt constrained Black women caused by the $2 trillion predatory lending crisis. And we are fast and furious in our approach. So we have a flagship initiative that we started within weeks of incorporating called 35 to Free. And that gets its name from the two statistics driving our work, which is a 35% rate of financial literacy that Black women hold, as well as a $35 billion of student debt that they shoulder under that $2 trillion umbrella. And the way the program works is we directly intervene into the lives of Black women whose student debt has wreaked havoc in terms of their employment possibilities and their upward mobility trends, their ability to build and pass down generational wealth. So we directly disperse payments up to $10,000 toward their student loans. And we also train them and coach them on finance and career development so that they have the complete set of tools and resources under their belt to make more informed decisions. Because we're like, y'all are not the problem. Y'all are not stupid. Y'all are not illiterate. I prefer really to say financial empowerment and preparedness, because that's what to succeed is when you're prepared. And basically just being that safe space for them and helping them get on their feet so that once they graduate beyond our program, they have the tools to keep that progress going and compounding. But we've also, like I touched on briefly, we've done a little bit of expansion into prevention. So there's an initiative called HIRE, HIRE, which is an acronym, versus higher, as in higher education. And that's where we go in and we've spoken with high schoolers and their teachers, the counselors, to just really paint a full 2023 up-to-date picture of what it's like migrating beyond secondary education and what options make sense. And the goal simply is keeping them as much out of debt as we can help and improving their earning prospects. And then on the after it's all said and done side, we have a third eye called interference. And that's where we lead engagements under our Prosperity Through Clarity arm, where companies have hired us actually to lead engagements to break all of this down, to talk about the history of predatory lending, how it's impacting the economy at every level, but also to give the employees clear guidance on how to structure a debt relief plan in their own case, because so many people they're freaked out right now. Payments are starting up again for the first time in 3 years on federal debt that a lot of people almost forgot even existed. And so just being that kind of, again, safe space and safety, I don't know about net, but just say, we've got you. Like, of course, we can't just make it go away as much as we wish we could, but here is how to regain control and take it back and make a plan so that you're not just left out high and dry.
Yeah. Maybe not a safety net, but maybe an arm around you to hold on to you and help guide you through.
Yes. A helping hand.
Yeah. Yeah. So has all of this stuff that's gone on politically, is any of that impacting your work?
It did, and then it did not. So actually this time last year, we were up in arms because we just knew. We're like, yeah, everyone keeps teasing this whole federal cancellation. I'll believe it when I see it, aka when pigs fly, right? I have no faith. And I think it was not unreasonable to take that stance based on the track record. So I remember getting the news, and we were a matter of days away actually from paying on our last year Prosperette student debt. And the way that works is we quite literally log in on their behalf and link our account details and make the payments for them. And we did not differentiate between private versus federal because we were, again, thinking this whole thing is just a matter of when pigs fly, it's never going to happen. Yeah. So then we're like, oh, snap. Now we actually do have to start parsing out and prioritizing the private loans. And then for those who were potentially going to have it all wiped away with less than $20K in student debt, we're like, at this rate, we would not be good stewards of our resources to pay this if it's going to be taken care of already. And we were pretty much giving them the option to just bow out gracefully. We're like, we are not holding you to the remainder of the program because we know you were staying in it with the expectation of the debt relief. So it was just this very volatile, disjointed learning as we were going process and trying to stay transparent and keeping them in communication, because the last thing we wanted is to seem like we were going back on our word and being untrustworthy. It was just, a matter of if this is really going to displace our effort, then it would be foolish of us still being a nonprofit. Like we're talking about the government, which literally makes money and prints money, right? So in that season, we were we definitely were not expecting that and we had to adjust. However, once they started with the lawsuits coming in and backpedaling, we're like, all right, we see what's happening here. Disregard. We will roll out payments as scheduled. We just basically acted like it didn't happen. And moving forward, we no longer distinguish either because we're like, this has set a very concerning precedent and we don't have any good reason to think that there will be cancellation, at least to that extent. So, yeah, I mean, it's just been an opportunity really for us to step up and do what they have consistently dropped the ball on doing.
Yeah. You talk about a government that prints money. What I say is they can fund every war that they want to in foreign countries, but heaven forbid they help us here at home who are straddled with this student loan debt. And many other countries, a lot of people don't know, we're so America centric here, but in many other countries, if you have the potential and capacity to do work at a higher education level, that education is free. Mm-hmm. Right. But here, everything's about a profit, including getting a higher education.
Yes.
I won't go down that rabbit hole. So we're coming into, or actually last night, we're in a political season, right? We've got an election coming next year, and people need to be aware of policies that impact them. And especially when we're talking about the student debt crisis. Do you have any words of wisdom or advice for people as they start looking at who the candidates are in their area, whether it's their state government, their state school systems, where if they have elected officials there, or even at the national level, the congressional representatives, because they're the ones who pass the budget. You know, we tend to vote for president all the time, but we don't always look at who's running for congressional leadership. Any advice for folks as they go into that political season, and especially young people, because that's, you know, you're talking to a lot of young folks that are just getting into the age of being able to vote and make decisions that will impact them for years to come. Any words of wisdom for them?
Yes, I say discernment is king because I think it's so easy, especially when people are coming into it in a very vulnerable state and they feel like everything is on the line for them. And I think a lot of times people are just so kind of desperate for that savior, that person, because of their promises and the platforms that they have propagated and just all the jargon and the key buzzwords. I think it's so important to just focus on their track record and just focus on actions. I mean, talk is so cheap. And I think a lot of people are just very easily swayed. And I think social media does not do any favors too with the false information and the narratives and the trickery. And I mean, this godforsaken AI business, like I hate to sound like, you know, to take that kind of a stance, but I've seen so many concerning just posts and exposés talking about how people can just pretty much write completely BS stories using AI technology. So I think being able to watch for those things and just, again, being really discerning and going the extra mile to vet your information and know what is accurate and what really is being said by said individuals. And just looking also at what their long-term vision is. Like, are they just talking about the now, or are they saying, you know, this is an issue that really speaks to me and this is my plan for addressing this in the community. And because of XYZ tie, I think, you know, just being willing to hear people out. And as my mom and her sister say, trust but verify.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So I always sign off with the paraphrase of, I call her the great Dr. Angela Davis, who said, I am no longer accepting the things I cannot change. I am changing the things I cannot accept. So I want to ask you, what's the one thing you cannot accept? And then what can my listeners do to support that change?
Oh, I just had a dream about it, actually. I cannot accept. Last night, I remember I was like, oh my gosh, this is, God really does speak to me through dreams. I cannot accept us having normalized a new form of enslavement. I cannot accept that higher education has come with invisible shackles and that they are in some cases leading to premature death by suicide, but also just a very lessened and almost diminished quality of life in some cases. I think the fact that we've been stripped of personal freedoms because of our educational aspirations is completely intolerable. It's unconscionable. And so that's what wakes me up every single day, and something that I will grind and be relentless until I see that finally go in a different direction, because I just refuse to believe that this is the best that America can do for its young people.
And how can our listeners help?
I would absolutely say money. Money talks. Money is what makes the moves. I used to be so shy about this. Well, just sharing on social media. That's of course helpful too, but just straight up, we are very much trying to scale, and we've seen the demands. There's not a corner of this country that is unaffected by student debt. And the only way we can scale this programming to help more women and more people is certainly with more resources. So donating to us is a great move. October is a very timely time if you want to really make a double impact, because that happens to be SLAM, Student Loan Awareness Month. And so we've got a very exciting new offering coming that I can't say too much on just yet, but we'll be announcing when it kicks off in October. And to be able to fund work like that, that's going to help us really get a larger megaphone and reach the masses to educate people on these issues. So, our website, the Prosperity, that's with an A, PROSPARITY, project.org/donate. But then, of course, again, like, we understand that for those who are not in a position to give, being willing to just even recommend us, in your communities. I do so many speaking engagements, and I do allocate a couple that I do as volunteer work and pro bono. So just to be able to talk to young people is always an opportunity that I cherish. But also I know I said also a million times, one other thing I would recommend too is checking in with the people in your life who have student loan debt. Because a lot of people just, they feel like, what have I done to myself? And they feel like no one understands. I would say just empathy, right? If you catch yourself being someone, if this didn't affect you, or if you did have student debt, but you were very easily able to pay it down or pay it off, just have compassion, have empathy for people that are going through this, because it's a systemic issue. It's not on the individual, right? Everyone's just doing what they were always told and promised was going to get them a better life. And because of bad actors and abuse and exploitation of that trust, it has backfired. So I would say very much just changing your tone and being more of a compassionate, understanding disposition can go a long way as well.
All right. SLAM, Student Loan Awareness Month, is October.
Yes.
I did not know about SLAM. We're going to make sure that we promote that along with this episode. Brianna, thanks so much. My guest today has been Brianna Franklin. It is the Prosperity Project, Prosperity with an A. We're going to put that link to the website, contact information in the notes. And as she said, money talks. If you've got it, please share. And if not, just have some empathy. Also, Brianna, I want to make sure people know that if they are educators, that you do come to schools.
I sure do.
And can support. All right. So educators, I know you're listening. If you've got kids at your school who could benefit from hearing what Brianna has to share, make sure you reach out to her in that manner as well. And to the rest of you equity warriors, if you want to do something about student loan debt and its disproportionate impact on people of color, you know what I say, get involved and then stay involved. Vote like your life depended on it. Vote for your congressional representatives, not just for president. Vote all the way down the ballot. Advocate through social media. Follow me and Brianna. Subscribe, like. Don't forget to share. We learned that in kindergarten, and continue to join me every week. Connect with me on social using my links down in the notes, and send your questions, topics, and requests to info@askdrberry.com. And I will answer those questions and bring you experts like Brianna to help address those topics. And don't worry about the things you cannot change. Change the things you can no longer accept. And I'll see you next time.